Captain Jake Morrison checked the navigation display one more time. The jump to hyperspace would happen in 30 minutes, and then they would be halfway to Haven's Edge colony. Behind him, the bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. "Everything looks good, Captain," said Lisa Martinez from the pilot's seat. She had been flying ships for 12 years and never missed a jump window. "The colonists are all secure in cryosleep." Jake nodded and walked to the large viewing window. 847 people were sleeping in the cargo holds below. Families mostly. Teachers, farmers, engineers, and shop owners who wanted to start fresh on a new world. Some had saved for years to buy passage on the New Horizon. Tony Burke, their engineer, came onto the bridge carrying a cup of coffee. "The hyperdrive is running perfectly. We should reach Haven's Edge right on schedule." Tony was a big man with gentle hands who could fix anything that broke on a starship. Katie Ross, their medic, sat at her station reviewing the colonists' medical files. She was former military, though she never talked much about her service. Jake knew she had been an army medic, but something in her eyes suggested she had seen more action than most field doctors. 5 minutes to hyperspace jump," Lisa announced. Jake settled into his captain's chair. This was his favorite part of any journey. The moment when the stars streaked past the windows and they jumped across impossible distances in the blink of an eye. He had been making cargo runs to the outer colonies for 8 years, and it never got old. "Beginning jump sequence," Lisa said, her fingers dancing across the control panel. The stars outside began to shift and blur. Jake felt the familiar tingle in his stomach as the ship's systems prepared to tear a hole in space itself. Then everything went wrong. Massive shapes appeared around them, blocking out the stars. The New Horizon shook violently as invisible forces grabbed hold of the ship. Red lights flashed across every control panel. "What the hell?" Tony shouted, spilling coffee across his shirt. "We're caught in tractor beams," Lisa said, fighting with the controls. "Multiple ships, big ones." Jake stared out the window at the alien vessels surrounding them. They looked like giant sea creatures made of metal and flesh. Curved hulls covered in what looked like scales. Weapon ports that opened and closed like breathing gills. He had never seen anything like them. "Are they human ships?" Katie asked, though she already knew the answer. "No," Jake said quietly. "Definitely not human." The largest of the alien ships moved closer. It was easily 10 times the size of the New Horizon. Strange lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Jake counted 12 ships in total, arranged in a perfect hunting formation around his vessel. "Captain," Lisa said, her voice tight with fear. "They're scanning us. Full bioscans of everyone on board." A new voice filled the bridge, speaking English with a strange accent. The words seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Human vessel, you will not resist. Your people have been chosen for the great hunt of the spiral season." Jake grabbed the communication panel. "This is Captain Morrison of the civilian transport. New Horizon. We're carrying families to the Haven's Edge colony. We're not military. We have no weapons." Harsh laughter echoed through the bridge. "We know what you are, human. We have studied your species for many cycles. You will make excellent prey." The alien continued speaking. "I am High Huntmaster Vextalar of the Zephyrian Hunting Syndicate. For 1,000 years we have hunted the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Now we hunt you." "Listen," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "If you want our cargo, you can have it. Food, mining equipment, medical supplies. Just let the colonists go." "You misunderstand," Vextalar replied. "We do not want your possessions. We want you. Your people will be transported to our hunting preserve. There you will run and we will chase. Some of you may survive long enough to provide sport." Katie stood up from her station. "How many others have you done this to?" "Many species. The Deltans lasted 6 days before we caught the last one. The Rigelians managed 8 days, but they were naturally fast. We estimate humans will last perhaps 4 days. You have no natural weapons, no thick hides, no poison glands. You should be easy prey." Jake felt sick to his stomach. These aliens had been hunting and killing intelligent species for sport. Now they wanted to do the same to his passengers, families with children, elderly couples starting retirement on a new world, people who had never hurt anyone, The hunt begins in 1 hour, Vex Toller announced. Your people will be awakened and transported to Cathara Prime. Each will receive basic survival gear and a 24-hour head start. After that, we begin the chase. The communication channel closed. Jake looked around at his crew. Tony was pale and shaking. Lisa gripped the pilot controls so hard her knuckles were white. Katie stood perfectly still, but Jake could see her, mind working behind her eyes. What do we do? Tony asked. Before Jake could answer, the ship shuddered again. Strange sounds echoed through the hull as alien machinery attached itself to the new horizon. Then came the sound Jake dreaded most, the hiss of cargo bay doors opening. They're waking up the colonists, Katie said. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. In his pocket was a small emergency beacon, standard equipment on all civilian ships. If he could activate it without the aliens noticing, it would send a distress signal to the human colonial defense force. The signal would take weeks to reach the nearest military base, but it was their only hope. Moving slowly, Jake reached into his pocket and found the beacon. He pressed the activation button and felt it vibrate once. The signal was away, racing through space toward human military forces. Captain Morrison, Vex's Talar's voice returned. You and your crew will also participate in the hunt. Consider it an honor. Few species have provided us with such anticipation. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Below, he could see alien creatures herding confused and terrified colonists onto transport ships. Men, women, and children who had been sleeping peacefully moments ago, now facing a nightmare they could never have imagined. We're going to survive this, Jake said quietly to his crew. And when we do, these aliens are going to wish they had never heard of humans. Katie moved to stand beside him. Some of those colonists are military veterans. The aliens might get a bigger fight than they expect. Jake nodded, watching the last of his passengers disappear into alien ships. The hunt was about to begin, but Jake had a feeling that Vex Toller and his hunters had made a very dangerous mistake. They had chosen to hunt humans without understanding what humans were capable of when their backs were against the wall. The transport ships pulled away from the new horizon, carrying their human cargo toward an alien world designed for hunting and death. But they also carried something the aliens had not planned for. They carried human determination, human adaptability, and human fury at seeing their families threatened. The Zephyrians thought they were beginning a hunt. They had no idea they had just started a war. 3 days had passed since the hunt began, and High Huntmaster Vex Teller was pleased with the results. His hunters had captured 47 humans using standard techniques. Fear, overwhelming force, and superior technology had worked perfectly on every other species they had hunted, but something was bothering him. Vex Teller stood in his command chamber aboard the flagship, watching the hunting reports scroll across bioluminescent displays. The captured humans were being held in specimen containers just like all previous prey. But the reports from his hunting teams were strange. The humans are not behaving as expected, reported Sub-Hunter Klextar, one of his most experienced field commanders. They do not scatter randomly like other prey. They move in organized groups. They share resources. They help their weak instead of abandoning them. Vex Teller clicked his mandibles in annoyance. Explain. The female called Katie Ross has united 5 separate human groups. She teaches them to make weapons from rocks and metal scraps. She shows them how to set traps. The humans are learning our patrol patterns and avoiding capture. This was unexpected. Most prey species panicked when the hunt began. They ran blindly, fought uselessly, and died quickly. The Zephyrians had perfected techniques over centuries to ensure exciting but brief hunts that pleased their wealthy patrons. What of the other human groups? The male called Danny Clark leads a group that attacked our scouts in Sector 7. 3 of our hunters are dead. The humans used improvised explosives and coordinated ambush tactics. Vex Toller's skin shifted to an angry purple color. 3 hunters dead? How is this possible? These humans have no natural weapons, no armor, no advanced technology. They appear to be learning, Huntmaster. Each encounter teaches them more about our weaknesses. They study our equipment when they kill us. They copy our tactics and improve upon them. Another hunter entered the chamber. Huntmaster, we have more concerning news. The human called Sam Wright has somehow accessed our communication frequencies. The prey are intercepting our hunt coordination signals. Vextaller felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. In 1,000 years of hunting, no prey species had ever turned their own technology against them. The humans were not just surviving, they were adapting and fighting back. Down on the hunting preserve of Cathara Prime, Katie Ross crouched behind a fallen tree and watched the alien patrol pass by. She counted 6 Zephyrian hunters moving in formation through the purple forest. They carried bioweapons that could stun or kill, and their natural armor made them tough opponents. But Katie had learned things about them. She had discovered that their compound eyes had blind spots. Their hearing was excellent, but they could not smell very well. Most importantly, they relied too heavily on their technology and not enough on basic combat instincts. "Danny, are you in position?" She whispered into the captured communicator. "Ready," came Danny Clark's voice. The former Marine sergeant had taken to guerrilla warfare like a fish to water. 3 days of hunting had transformed him from a retired soldier into a deadly predator. "Sam, what about the air support?" "I've got 2 of their flyers ready to go," Sam Wright reported. The ex-Air Force pilot had figured out how to operate captured Zephyrian aircraft. "These things are designed for hunting scared prey, not for air combat. They're slow and clumsy." Katie smiled grimly. The aliens had made a critical error. They assumed humans would behave like every other species they had hunted. They expected panic, desperation, and quick defeat. Instead, they found organized resistance. "Execute," Katie ordered. Danny's team attacked from the left flank using captured alien weapons. The Zephyrian patrol turned to face this threat, walking directly into Katie's carefully prepared trap. Improvised explosives made from alien power cells and human engineering knowledge detonated around the hunters. 2 aliens died instantly. The others tried to retreat but found their escape route blocked by more human fighters. These were not soldiers. They were teachers, farmers, and shop owners who had learned to fight for their families. Sam's captured flyers screamed overhead, strafing the remaining aliens with their own weapons. Within minutes, the entire patrol was dead or disabled. "Collect their equipment," Katie ordered, "and their biosignatures. We need those pheromone glands." This was Katie's most important discovery. The Zephyrians used biological markers to track each other and coordinate hunts. By harvesting these glands from dead hunters, the humans could mask their own scents and even track alien movements. Back in orbit, Vextaller received reports that made his blood run cold. Another hunting party had vanished in Sector 12. Orbital surveillance showed human groups moving with military precision through terrain that should have been impossible for them to navigate. "Huntmaster," his communication officer announced, "we are receiving priority messages from several galactic governments." "What do they want?" "The Altarian Council, the Procyon Federation, and the Centauri Hegemony all send the same message. They demand we release the humans immediately." Vextallar's skin flushed with anger. "Since when do prey species have protectors? These governments fear us. They would never interfere with our hunts." The messages all contain the same warning. "Huntmaster, they say we have violated the first law of the stars." "What law? There is no law that restricts our hunting." The communication officer hesitated. "The law states, never hunt humans." Vextaller had never heard of such a law. In his species' long history of hunting, they had pursued dozens of intelligent species across the galaxy. No one had ever warned them away from any particular prey. "This is cowardice," he declared. "These governments fear that we will hunt them next. The humans are just another prey species, weak, slow, and helpless." But even as he spoke, Vextallar knew this was no longer true. The reports flooding in told a different story. Human groups were not just surviving. They were hunting his hunters. On Cathara Prime, the transformation was accelerating. Katie Ross now commanded over 600 surviving humans organized into disciplined units. They had established fortified positions using alien technology and human engineering. They had learned to use Zephyrian weapons better than their original owners. Danny Clark's kill teams moved through the preserve like ghosts, striking hunting parties and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. They had developed tactics specifically designed to terrify their alien pursuers. Psychological warfare learned from human history, Sam Wright had turned the Zephyrians' own air superiority against them. Flying captured alien craft, he led air strikes against hunter staging areas and communication posts. The prey had become predators. Most disturbing of all was how the humans treated captured aliens. Unlike other species that begged for mercy or tried to bargain, humans studied their captives. They learned about Zephyrian biology, technology, and tactics. Then they used this knowledge to kill more efficiently. Captain Jake Morrison, held in HFY, the main compound with other crew members, managed to overhear alien communications. The Zephyrians were no longer talking about hunting sport. They were discussing survival. The prey has become something else, one hunter reported. They do not fight like animals trying to escape. They fight like a military force trying to win. Morrison smiled despite his circumstances. The aliens had expected to hunt helpless victims. Instead, they had awakened something that had slept in human genes for millions of years. The same instincts that had driven humanity to survive ice ages, predators, and wars were now focused on these alien hunters. Vextalar made his decision. Send all hunting parties to the surface. Every hunter we have. End this quickly before it gets worse. But it was already too late. His message was intercepted by Sam Wright and transmitted to every human group on the planet. Katie Ross received the intelligence and smiled coldly. They're sending everything they have, she told her lieutenants. Good. When they're all on the surface, they can't escape. The Zephyrians had broken the first law of the stars. They had hunted humans. Now they were about to learn why that law existed in the first place. The hunt was ending, but not the way anyone expected. The prey had become the predator, and the galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before. Humans fighting not just to survive, but to ensure their enemies could never threaten anyone again. The edge of the Cathera system erupted in flashes of light as 47 human warships dropped out of hyperspace. At their head was the massive dreadnought Retribution, bristling with weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Admiral Patricia Stone stood on the bridge of her flagship, studying the alien hunting fleet through the main viewer. She had seen the intercepted broadcasts. She knew what these creatures had done to her people. Communications, she ordered, in a voice like cold steel. Broadcast on all frequencies, 17 languages. Ready, Admiral. Stone stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back. This is Admiral Patricia Stone of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You have taken our people for your twisted games. You have 60 minutes to return them unharmed to this location. This is your only warning. On Cathara Prime, the hunt had become a nightmare for the Zephyrian hunters. What should have been simple prey collection had turned into a war zone. Katie Ross now commanded 680 surviving humans who had not only adapted to the alien environment, but had reshaped it into a fortress. The humans had learned to use everything. Captured alien bioweapons were turned against their creators. Zephyrian communication devices coordinated human attacks. Even the alien vehicles had been reverse-engineered and improved with human modifications. Danny Clark led his kill teams through the purple forests like avenging spirits. His soldiers were teachers and farmers who had learned to fight with a fury that shocked their alien hunters. They used tactics learned from human history, modified for alien biology and technology. Target the pheromone glands first, Danny instructed his team as they prepared for another ambush. Blind them, then hit their communication implants. Make them feel helpless. These were not random attacks. The humans had studied their enemies and developed specific techniques to break Zephyrian morale. They had learned that aliens who had spent centuries hunting weaker species were not prepared for prey that fought back intelligently. Sam Wright flew overhead in a captured alien craft, coordinating the air assault on the main hunting compound. He had learned to pilot Zephyrian flyers better than their original operators, using human combat aviation techniques that the aliens had never encountered. Katie, we have visual on the main compound. Sam reported through the communication network. Looks like they're trying to execute prisoners. Katie Ross felt something cold and deadly settle in her chest. Through her binoculars, she could see Zephyrian guards forcing human captives into an open area. High Huntmaster Vex Talar stood before them, holding a ceremonial blade. All units, immediate assault, Katie ordered. No prisoners. The attack that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humans who had been peaceful colonists days earlier fought with a coordination and brutality that terrified their alien captors. They used psychological warfare, adaptive tactics, and a ruthless efficiency that turned the hunting preserve into a slaughter ground. Danny Clark's ground forces hit the compound from 3 directions simultaneously. Sam Wright's air units provided close support with captured alien weapons. Katie Ross led the main assault, moving through enemy positions like a force of nature, but it was the way the humans fought that broke the Zephyrian defenders. They did not just kill, they terrified. Every attack was designed to make the surviving aliens understand that they were no longer hunters. They were prey. Vextalar found himself trapped in his own command post as human fighters stormed through his defenses. These creatures moved like ghosts, struck like lightning, and fought with a cold intelligence that made his species' hunting tactics look primitive. "How is this possible?" he screamed at his remaining guards. "They are prey. They have no natural weapons." Katie Ross appeared in the doorway carrying a captured Zephyrian weapon and wearing alien armor taken from dead hunters. Her eyes held something that made Vextalar's blood freeze in his veins. "You made a mistake," she said quietly. "You thought we were prey because we don't have claws or thick skin. But you never asked why a species without natural weapons survived. Long enough to reach the stars." She stepped closer and Vextalar saw death in her expression. "We survived because we learned to make weapons from everything. We learned to fight wars against our own species. We learned to adapt, overcome, and ensure our enemies could never threaten us again." The final assault lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the Zephyrian hunting compound was a smoking ruin and Vextalar was dead, killed by his own ceremonial blade in Katie Ross's hands. In orbit above Kythera Prime, Admiral Stone's deadline had expired. The alien hunting fleet had not responded to her ultimatum. Time for talking was over. "All ships," Stone ordered, "execute Broken Chain Protocol. Show them what happens when you hunt humans." The battle that followed lasted less than 20 minutes, but its effects would echo across the galaxy for generations. The human colonial defense force had spent decades preparing for war against hostile aliens. Their ships carried weapons and technologies that peaceful galactic civilizations had never imagined. Quantum disruption torpedoes phased through alien shields as if they did not exist. AI-controlled fighter swarms moved with precision that no biological pilot could match. Kinetic bombardment systems turned asteroids into planet-killing weapons. The Zephyrian bioships, evolved for hunting defenseless prey, proved helplessly obsolete against human military engineering. Their organic hulls melted under plasma bombardment. Their hunting sensors were blinded by electronic warfare systems. Their bioweapons were useless against human armor designed for total war. Vextalar's flagship died when a human torpedo punched through its hull and detonated inside the command chamber. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface, a brief star that announced the end of the Zephyrian hunting syndicate. When the last alien ship was destroyed, Admiral Stone broadcast her message across the galaxy on every available frequency. The transmission included full recordings of the Zephyrian hunt, showing the torture and murder of human civilians. "Let this be a lesson to all who would prey upon humanity," Stone's voice carried to every corner of known space. "We do not forget. We do not forgive. We do not stop. You broke the first law of the stars. This is what happens next." On Kythera Prime, the surviving humans gathered in the ruins of the hunting compound. 680 people who had been peaceful colonists a week ago now stood as hardened warriors. They had learned terrible lessons about survival, about violence, and about what humans were capable of when their families were threatened. Captain Jake Morrison, freed from his prison stood with Katie Ross as they watched human ships landing to evacuate the survivors. "What happens now?" he asked. Katie looked at the memorial they had built for the humans who died in the hunt. 166 names carved into alien metal. "Now we make sure this never happens again. To anyone." Sam Wright joined them, still wearing the flight suit from his captured alien aircraft. "The galaxy is going to be very different after this." Danny Clark nodded grimly. "Good. Maybe other species won't have to go through what we did." Admiral Stone's fleet remained in the Kithra system for 3 days, broadcasting their message to every corner of the galaxy. The recordings showed not just human suffering but human response. They showed what happened when a species evolved for warfare was pushed too far. The galaxy learned that humans were not just another prey species to be hunted and enslaved. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors who had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting wars, and they had finally found an enemy worthy of their full attention. The Zephyrian hunting syndicate was dead, but their legacy lived on. They had taught the galaxy the most important lesson in its history: never hunt humans. The price for breaking that law was extinction. The age of easy prey was over. The age of human justice had begun. The news of the Zephyrian massacre spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours of Admiral Stone's broadcast, every major government received the same terrifying message. A species they had dismissed as primitive had just eliminated one of the galaxy's most feared predator organizations in less than a day. The recordings showed everything: human civilians being hunted for sport, the transformation of prey into predators, the systematic destruction of an alien hunting fleet by human military forces. Most disturbing of all, they showed humans who fought not just to survive but to ensure their enemies could never threaten anyone again. Admiral Stone's fleet did not return to human space. Instead, they began systematically hunting down every member of the Zephyrian hunting syndicate across the galaxy. What had started as a rescue mission became something much darker and more permanent. On the bridge of the Retribution, Stone studied intelligence reports from across known space. The syndicate had operated for over 1,000 years, with hunting preserves on dozens of worlds and support facilities scattered throughout the galaxy. "Ma'am," reported Commander Lisa Hayes, her intelligence officer, "we've located 17 more syndicate facilities. They're holding captives from at least 12 different species." Stone nodded grimly. "Prepare liberation teams. Any syndicate members found alive are to be taken prisoner for interrogation. Any found dead." She paused. "Well, that saves us time." The human survivors from Cathera Prime had volunteered for a new special operations unit called Pack Hunters. Katie Ross, now holding the rank of colonel, led these warriors who had been psychologically transformed by their ordeal. They understood alien hunting tactics better than any human military analyst. Danny Clark commanded the ground assault teams. His soldiers were farmers and teachers who had learned to fight with a cold efficiency that terrified even human observers. They did not just defeat enemies. They broke them completely. Sam Wright developed new combat doctrines based on lessons learned during the hunt. Human fleets began incorporating psychological warfare techniques designed to destroy enemy morale. Before the first shot was fired, the first syndicate outpost fell within a week. Located in the Vega system, it housed captured members of 6 different species who had been held for months awaiting their turn in the hunting preserves. The pack hunters freed every prisoner and executed every syndicate member they found, but the real shock came when the freed prisoners refused to leave human protection. Representatives from their home governments arrived to escort them back, only to discover that the captives preferred to remain under human military guard. "Why?" asked Ambassador Threlkun of the Altarian Council. "Your own people are here to take you home safely." The freed prisoners looked at their rescuers with expressions of absolute trust. "The humans came for us," replied Veltar, a young Altarian who had been captured 3 months earlier, "when no one else did. When our own governments wrote us off as lost, they came." Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as a diplomatic liaison, tried to explain the situation to increasingly nervous alien governments. "Humanity seeks peace and cooperation with all species, but we will respond to aggression with overwhelming force. We've learned that sometimes the only way to stop predators is to ensure they can never hunt again. The diplomatic meetings were tense. Alien governments that had previously ignored humanity suddenly found themselves dealing with a species that fought wars unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Your response was disproportionate, complained Ambassador Zexmore of the Procyon Federation during one session. The Zephyrians were criminals, yes, but you destroyed their entire civilization. Morrison's response was calm but chilling. They hunted our children for sport. They tortured our families for entertainment. What would your species have done? The alien ambassador had no answer. His own government had known about the Zephyrian hunting syndicate for centuries, but had done nothing to stop them. Fear had kept them silent while innocent species suffered and died. Meanwhile, the pack hunters continued their systematic campaign. Each liberated facility revealed more horrors. Breeding programs designed to create better prey species. Genetic experiments to make victims more challenging to hunt. Research files on the psychology of fear and despair. Katie Ross stood in the ruins of a syndicate research facility on Rigel 7, reading through files that made her sick to her stomach. These aliens had spent centuries perfecting the art of causing suffering. They had turned torture into a science. Colonel, reported Sergeant Danny Martinez, one of her pack hunter team leaders. We've found the main data core. It contains records of every hunt they've conducted for the past 500 years. Katie nodded. Download everything. Other species deserve to know what happened to their people. The data core revealed the true scope of the syndicate's crimes. 43 intelligent species had been hunted to extinction. Hundreds of others had lost significant populations to the alien predators. The galaxy had been silent while genocide was committed for entertainment. Sam Wright's intelligence teams made another disturbing discovery. The syndicate had been planning to expand their operations. They had identified 17 new species as potential prey, including several that were considered allies of major galactic governments. They were going to hunt the Centaurians next, Wright reported during a strategy meeting. A species under direct hegemony protection. If they had succeeded, it would have started a galactic war. Admiral Stone studied the intelligence reports with growing anger. How many governments knew about this and did nothing? Most of them, Admiral. The syndicate operated openly. They even sold hunting broadcasts to wealthy individuals across the galaxy. This wasn't a secret organization. It was a known industry. The implications were staggering. The galaxy's major civilizations had allowed genocide to continue for centuries because they were afraid to act. They had written off entire species as acceptable losses to avoid confronting the syndicate. Human attitudes toward their alien neighbors began to shift. What had started as a desire for peaceful cooperation became something colder and more calculating. If the galaxy's governments could not or would not protect their own people, then humanity would do it for them. The Terran Protocol was established. Any attack on civilians of any species would trigger immediate human military response. Not assistance, not support. Direct intervention by human forces with full authorization to use whatever force was necessary. Alien governments protested this unilateral assumption of galactic police powers. Humanity's response was simple and terrifying. Stop us. The challenge went unanswered. Human military technology had advanced rapidly during their war against the Syndicate. Ships designed for exploration had been retrofitted with weapons capable of planetary sterilization. Peaceful colonies had become military staging areas. The last Syndicate stronghold was discovered in the Outer Rim, a massive facility built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. Intelligence indicated it held the Syndicate's leadership council and their most valuable prisoners. Katie Ross led the final assault personally. Her pack hunters had evolved from desperate survivors into the galaxy's most feared special forces unit. They fought with a precision and ruthlessness that made even human military observers uncomfortable. The battle was broadcast live across the galaxy. Every government, every species, every individual with access to quantum communications watched as humans systematically dismantled the last remnant of the Zephyrian hunting syndicate. The syndicate leaders tried to surrender, when they realized their defeat was inevitable. They offered wealth, technology, even their own people as bargains for their lives. Katie Ross's response was broadcast to every corner of known space. You showed no mercy to our children. You will receive exactly the same. The execution of the Syndicate leadership marked the end of an era. For the first time in galactic history, a major predator organization had been completely destroyed. Not defeated, not contained, but utterly eliminated. In the aftermath, alien governments scrambled to understand what humanity had become. The species they had dismissed as primitive had emerged as the galaxy's dominant military power in less than a year. More importantly, they had demonstrated a commitment to justice that transcended species boundaries. The pack hunters became a permanent force, tasked with hunting down predator species across the galaxy. Their methods were brutal, but effective. Within 6 months, 12 different organizations that preyed on weaker civilizations had either surrendered or been eliminated. Captain Morrison found himself serving as humanity's primary diplomatic representative, explaining the new galactic reality to increasingly nervous alien governments. "We're not conquerors," he told the Galactic Council during their emergency session. "We're protectors. The age of predators hunting innocent species is over." The galaxy had learned a terrible lesson. Humans were not just another species to be managed or dismissed. They were survivors who had spent their entire evolutionary history preparing for war. And they had finally found enemies worthy of their full attention. The Zephyrian hunting syndicate was dead. The galaxy's other predators were fleeing or surrendering. For the first time in millennia, prey species. 1 year after the Cathera hunt, the galaxy was a very different place. The first galactic accord in 3,000 years convened on neutral space station Harmony 7, with representatives from every major civilization in known space. For the first time in galactic history, humanity sat not as a primitive species seeking acceptance, but as an equal founding member. Admiral Patricia Stone, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, represented humanity at the proceedings. Behind her sat the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. 200 human warships patrolled the space around the station, each one capable of destroying entire enemy fleets. The assembled alien representatives spoke in hushed tones as Stone approached the central podium. Many had seen the recordings of human military capabilities. All of them understood that the balance of galactic power had fundamentally changed. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Stone began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "1 year ago, criminals calling themselves the Zephyrian Hunting Syndicate made a fatal mistake. They chose to hunt humans for sport. Today, I stand before you to ensure such mistakes are never made again." The chamber fell silent. Every representative understood they were witnessing a historic moment. The species that had been dismissed as primitive was now dictating terms to civilizations thousands of years older. "We propose the Cathera Doctrine," Stone continued. "Any species that hunts, enslaves, or tortures sentient beings will face immediate retaliation from the combined galactic fleet, led by human forces. The age of predators has ended." Ambassador Threlcan of the Altarian Council stood to respond. "Admiral Stone, while we appreciate humanity's decisive action against the Syndicate, some of us question whether such extreme measures are necessary." Stone's expression did not change, but her next words carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Ambassador, your own people sent us intelligence, reports on 17 other predator organizations currently operating in your territory. Organizations you have known about for decades, but done nothing to stop. Would you prefer to handle them yourselves, or shall we?" The Altarian ambassador sat down without another word. The message was clear. The galaxy's old policy of ignoring atrocities to maintain stability was over. Humanity would act where others would not. On a dozen worlds throughout the galaxy, human pack hunter teams were already implementing the new doctrine. Katie Ross, now holding the rank of general, commanded operations that had freed over 10,000 captives from various predator organizations in the past year. Her methods were efficient and terrifying. Pack hunter teams did not negotiate with Predators. They did not accept surrenders. They eliminated threats completely, ensuring that rescued victims would never again face the nightmare of being hunted. On Zerion Prime, General Ross stood in the ruins of another predator facility. This one had specialized in hunting children of various species, selling recordings of their terror to wealthy collectors across the galaxy. The pack hunters had needed less than 4 hours to eliminate every member of the organization. General, reported Colonel Danny Clark, her second-in-command. We've found the client lists. Over 3,000 individuals purchased hunting recordings from this facility. Ross nodded grimly. Send the information to intelligence. Every buyer becomes a target. Anyone who profits from hunting innocent beings shares the guilt. This was perhaps the most frightening aspect of human justice. They did not simply eliminate immediate threats. They tracked down every person who had supported, funded, or benefited from predator activities. The galaxy was learning that human memory was long and human patience was infinite when it came to protecting the innocent. Sam Wright, now commanding the Galactic Defense Initiative, had revolutionized space-based security. His early warning networks could detect predator activity anywhere in known space within hours. Rapid response fleets stationed throughout the galaxy could reach any system within days. The key, Wright explained to a gathering of alien military commanders, is making predators understand that there is nowhere to hide, no system too remote, no organization too powerful, no individual too wealthy to escape justice. His innovations went beyond technology. Human psychological warfare techniques had been adapted for use against predator species. The mere reputation of human forces was often enough to cause surrender without a shot being fired. Captain Jake Morrison had returned to civilian life, but his role had evolved far beyond simple cargo transport. His new ship, the Second Horizon, carried colonists to frontier worlds under the protection of the most powerful military force in galactic history. The memorial wall in his ship's main corridor bore the names and faces of the 166 colonists who had died during the Zephyrian hunt. Morrison made sure every new passenger saw those faces and understood the price that had been paid for their safety. "Why do you show us this?" asked Maria Santos, a teacher heading to the new Terra colony with her family. Morrison looked at the memorial for a long moment before answering. "Because they died so that you could travel in peace. Because their sacrifice changed the galaxy. Because no one should ever forget what happens when innocent people are threatened." The Second Horizon traveled the same route that had been intercepted by Zephyrian hunters a year earlier, but now the space lanes were patrolled by human warships and protected by early warning systems that made surprise attacks impossible. Other species had begun to understand that humanity offered something unprecedented in galactic history. True protection, not the conditional defense that depended on political alliances or economic interests, but absolute commitment to protecting innocent life regardless of species, planet, or political system. The transformation was remarkable. Species that had hidden in fear for centuries began to venture into open space. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to predator activity reopened under human protection. For the first time in millennia, the weak could travel the galaxy without fear. But perhaps the most significant change was in how predator species behaved. Those few organizations that still existed had abandoned their traditional hunting grounds. They no longer broadcast their activities or sold recordings to wealthy clients. They hid in the darkest corners of space, terrified that human forces might discover them. The Hegemony Council's archives revealed the true history of the First Law. Thousands of years ago, when humans were still primitive, an alien explorer ship had crashed on Earth. The sole survivor, a being called Historian Velnath, had lived among early humans for decades. His final report, buried in the deepest archives and forgotten until now, contained a warning that had been dismissed as the ravings of a traumatized survivor. These creatures called humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They do not simply fight to survive. They fight to ensure no one else suffers what they have suffered. Never let them reach the stars as enemies. The report had been filed away and forgotten. Now it read like prophecy. General Ross made regular visits to Cathara Prime, which had been transformed from a hunting preserve into a memorial and training facility. The monument at the site of the final battle bore a simple inscription in 17 languages. They broke the first law of the stars. This is what happened next. Standing before the memorial, Ross often thought about the transformation that had taken place. Ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances had become something the galaxy had never seen before. Not conquerors, seeking territory or resources, but protectors committed to ensuring justice for all sentient life. A young Centaurian diplomatic student, visiting the memorial as part of her studies, approached Ross with a question that had been asked countless times across the galaxy. General, why do humans care what happens to other species? Your own people are safe now. You could simply defend your own territory and ignore the rest of the galaxy. Ross looked at the memorial, thinking of the colonists who had died simply because they were in the wrong place when predators decided to hunt. Because we learned something during that hunt, she said finally. We learned that there is no safety while predators exist anywhere. We learned that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The student made notes, but Ross could see she did not fully understand. Few aliens did. They could not comprehend a species that would fight wars to protect strangers, that would risk their own people to save others they had never met. Admiral Stone's fleet continued to patrol the galaxy, a visible reminder that the age of predators was over. Human ships carried sensors capable of detecting distress calls across dozens of star systems. Response teams trained for immediate deployment to any crisis. The galaxy had learned that humans meant exactly what they said. Attack innocent civilians, of any species, and face immediate, overwhelming retaliation. Not negotiation, not diplomatic protests. War. The final vindication came when the Outer Rim colonies reported complete elimination of predator activity for the first time in recorded history. Trade flourished, exploration expanded. Species that had lived in fear for millennia began to reach for the stars. In a quiet ceremony aboard the Retribution, Admiral Stone read the names of every human who had died in the Zephyrian hunt. The list was short, but their impact had changed the galaxy forever. They had died as